So massive thanks for joining myself. Look, it was an interesting day yesterday. A number of interviews on Instagram. I'm not sure if we've got any today. Certainly before 2 p.m. I don't think we do. What we do have is a interview with Daryl Norcott of Lendwell. That's going to be my Facebook business page in the next 15 minutes or less. bquinevents.com. So check myself out. Check Daryl's interview with myself out. We're going to focus on the funding side. Looking at the topic of Monday, which is focused on retail. Many people looking at the opportunities of retail to residential, of whether high streets will become homes. So it's already hampered in many respects. So delighted Daryl's going to be with myself this morning. And as I say, that's going to be via my Facebook live streaming. And 8:30 this morning. And just a reminder that this afternoon, myself, Evan Main Donald, Nicholas Woolwork and Ollie Lowry will be, as I say, morning Jack. You're welcome to join me on video if you want. So more than happy to invite you onto the video. At 8:30 I'm going to be with Daryl. So as I say, this afternoon going to be with Evan, Nicholas Woolwork and Ollie Lowry, looking at VR, looking at something which I have to admit I'm not a expert in by any stretch, but I see the growth, I see the brilliant. So I see the interest levels in sustainability. So I'm just waiting for Jack to join me. So hopefully he will do. Jack,
morning. How are we doing?
I'm good. What are you doing up very, very early? So massive thanks for joining myself. It's I'm amazed to see you up this early, Jack.
8 o'clock?
Yeah, 8 o'clock. Yeah.
No. Don't be silly, Brendan. That's not early for us entrepreneurs.
So Jack, for those listeners who don't know, Jack is chairing the panel on the 8th of June, focus on office space. You're going to see Jack this coming Monday. Also, if you're in the room, which is focused on deals, creative deals. Jack, I've brought you in for the 8th of June to chair the panel. I know we've got the likes of Gavin Gallagher, who's got one of the largest office parks in Europe, over 40 acres, Will Stokes as well on that panel. And there's a panelist you've never met before, John Williams, who speaks at likes of MIPIM and so forth. So spoken for me about 5 years ago. And that's because someone did an introduction. Ruben did an introduction for me. Look, so I've brought you onto that particular panel, Jack, because of your experience both in your previous life, pre-EXP property investments. When I say previous life experience, and also because of what's happening now in one of your developments, which is partially office. Do you just want to explain that, Jack?
Yeah, so, well, actually, one of the first things I did when I moved into property full time is I took on the management of my parents' it was then an industrial portfolio. It was a mixture of B8 buildings, basically, five 4,000 square foot buildings. So across all, it was quite a large development of 20,000 square foot of industrial. Over that time that I've been managing them, pretty much all of them have been converted to offices. One particularly by an architectural practice locally, and they spent £300,000 on the fit out. So I managed all of the leasing progress, all of the scope of works, etc. That was my first taste of office. I then went more into residential flips on my own for a few years. And then at the back end of that, I went and managed a office fit out for Net-a-Porter in White City, West London, which was a £7 million contract. And I project managed the fit out there. So that was complete blank canvas, design, inception, delivery, completion, which was on time and definitely over budget because it was an open book development that. So secondary experience was running that project alongside with a very talented project management team that I was working for. That was a really exciting scheme. At any given day, we could have anywhere between 250 contractors on site at one time. So a massive scheme. It was 70,000 square foot to accommodate an office of 700 staff. Really cool development that had some really interesting intricacies. So and then off the back of that, we formed EXP.
Jack, sorry. Really interesting intricacies.
Yeah, so for example, a lot of office developments are built around functionality, but when you're working for a design business like Net-a-Porter, the functionality isn't necessarily the most important. They like breakout areas, they like spacing things out, they like different places that you can visit to do different types of work at different times in the day. They had flexi meeting rooms. They had a walkway, which was called an arbor walkway, which cost nearly £1 million worth of woodwork, which was basically, it felt like you're walking down the inside of a whale, like a skeletal walking feature. So lots of working for other people, and then Ben and I set up EXP Property Investments, and our first and actually largest purchase to date was a mixed-use scheme, which we're converting part of it to Grade A offices, which we're going to let out and hold. Nothing to do with the scale that Gavin Gallagher's dealing with, but it's 6 boutique offices around sort of 500 square foot that we're hopefully bringing to market later on this year.
So I was going to say, so in terms of that's the 8th. Of course, I go live on the 1st as well, the 1st of June, which is this coming Monday, focused on... I know this one is what's Ben's very keen on, the opportunities for developers of turning retail into residential development. Hopefully, I'm not giving too much away when I say Ben's keen on that particular strategy. I was going to say, Jack, in terms of office, you mentioned Gavin Gallagher there. Don't quote me on the exact numbers. It's 40-acre office park. I've been to the site in Dublin, went over there last year. 9,000 employees, about 50 different companies. So, substantial park to say the least. As Aaron says, it's one of the largest office parks in Europe by far. I was going to say, in terms of the office sector and the panel, what do you think some of the key questions are for the listeners on the 8th of June? So it's from 9:40 until midday. What do you think some of the key questions to get over regarding the office sector?
I think there's one big question that everyone wants to know, and I think it's probably going to be the driving force of the panel and the main topic. So with all these behavioural changes that we've encountered with COVID-19, how's that going to impact the office market? So my brother-in-law works in an office with 200 people in the centre of Reading, and he believes that it will impact his Monday to Friday. He works in a very office orientated role. It's always been very office orientated, Monday to Friday, exact times of the day, very few meetings in context. But that's now going to go to flexi working, to his team meeting once a week in office, but other teams not. So there's a huge impact to the change it's going to have on a lot of businesses and in retrospect offices. So I think people like Will Stokes are going to do pretty well having co-working and flexible working spaces. I think the more traditional office technique of a whole office for 1,000 people is actually going to get debunked a bit, which is why we're pleased we've got small boutique units for like more between 2 to 6 staff, and maybe their workforce is about 20 and they take it in turns and they come into office when they want. So I think the biggest question and the most interesting question is, what is the impact that's going to change from all these habits that we're now adopting, and that there's a huge shake in the office market right now, that big offices are going to have to be changed, smaller offices are going to have to be readapted, and I'm really excited to see where it's going. Why do you think
smaller offices, final question, Jack, why do you think smaller offices have to be, massive thanks, Kunle, for joining myself as well. Why do you think smaller offices have to be readapted?
Well,
Is it because of COVID-19? Is it because I've seen some people online who've put, floor markings, one-way systems? It's almost, I don't know if it's going a bit too far, Jack, and maybe it's not. But in terms of, one direction in the workspace, is it really going to work?
I think the smaller offices are going to be changing because I think they're going to be higher in demand for firms that need a flexible working space. So I think that smaller offices are going to be very desirable, and I think they're going to have to be very flexible. So I think you're going to have like shared. It's going to be multi-purpose, so that anyone from the organisation can come in and work on the desk if they want to, if they need to. But I think predominantly the big change is going to be a lot of people are going to be now adapting to work from home. So it's going to be a hub, if that makes sense. Whereas before, working in the city meant that your home was the office, and you were spending little time at home, and you're commuting every day, Monday to Friday, and you spent weekends at home. I think that's now going to completely change, and you go into work when you need to. And it's going to be an adaptive change across a lot of businesses, because in reality, if you're joining a company, let's say you're going for a job move, and you're joining a new company, for example, let's just assume Microsoft, and you're interviewing and you say, so what's your working criteria? And they say, you have to be in Monday to Friday, you have to be in 9 to 5. That's going to put people off, given this current pandemic. This is going to remain in people's memory for a short period of time. If you join a company that's maybe a bit more dynamic and gets what people want, and they say, we would like you to come in at some point between Monday to Friday, but we want you to come in if it's going to increase your efficiency in work. So if you need to meet with 5 other employees, if you need to do a presentation, if you need to have a board meeting, if you need to come in. But if you don't need to come in, save that commute, work from home. So I think there's going to be a lot of integration with more like technology, like video calls and Cisco and things like that. And I think that smaller offices are going to be more of a base than an office, basically.
What I've heard, and final comments, is potentially it's not going to be city centre, which is going to be busy with co-working spaces. Particularly looking at London, it's going to be zones 2, 3, 4. And maybe it's wrong. Maybe this is just one suggestion I've heard from someone, but it's the suburban outer areas rather than the inner areas which are going to be busy. Jack, hopefully we can catch up just before the 8th of June. I will see you this coming Monday anyway, because you're in the breakout room. Kunle, I really appreciate you being on board. I really loved, I don't know if you caught it, Jack, but Kunle was with Kevin McLeod last night. I have to admit, I thought it was better than the TV show. Kevin, I hope he's not listening, but it was really interesting. It was very, very different. I have to admit, I've seen more Grand Designs Instagram than Grand Designs TV recently. I thought, I just found it fascinating, to say the least. It was all about models. It talked about, and it, for example, even St. Paul's, going back to the mid 1600s, designing St. Paul's using models. It was also, I saw how creative Kevin McLeod was. Possibly didn't realize how creative he was in what he did. Jack, I just want to give the listeners a chance how they can connect with you. So your website is exppropertyinvestments.co.uk. Have I got that right or wrong?
It's exppropertyinvestments.com. You can contact me on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm probably more active on Facebook, or you can just drop me an email, jack@exppropertyinvestments.com.
As I say, Jack will be in the breakout room this coming Monday, which his breakout room is focused on creative deals. His business partner of EXP Property Investments, Ben Richards, is going to be in the design room. So, Kunle, to all the listeners out there, I know we've got Unique Josh as well.
Good to see you, Kunle.
Massive thanks. I'm going to be changing channels now, and I'm going to be with Daryl Norker at now, or coming up in the next couple of minutes, via Facebook Live. And then this afternoon, I'm going to be with Evan Maindonald at 2 p.m., Ollie Lowry and Nicholas Woolwork, talking about innovation. So massive thanks, Jack, and thanks to our listeners as well.
Pleasure. Thanks, Brendan. Catch you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.